That was the free gift. I bought an Olight, which is just a brand of flashlight. And they gave you that free gift. It's a nice light. Nice, metal light. Rechargeable USB with a nice magnetic charging thing, not a plug-in. But I got it. I watched his channel, The Campulence Man. It's this dude. He's from New York. But he's down in Quartzsite. And now he's moving north for the summer. He's up in Hurricane, Utah area. And cool channel. He's got a cool dog, cool guy. His voice is a little tough. He's just got one of those voices. Check it out. Nothing but good things and positive things. I also, my electric scooter I got through him, used his code for a little discount. And but he's got, it's just, nothing bad or anything. I watch him all the whole video and listen to it. He's got one of those kind of voices that can get a little tough. But so nothing, no negative on that. So it's like 12:02 a.m. Monday morning, 2025. So I guess like a recap of mainly my gig yesterday and just what I've done this week. And the deal is here, I got this will be up on the Pooh channel, which to me, and anybody who has, like, I know I got 5 siblings, and I know at least probably 2 of them are like rolling in the eyes, or why would you call it that? If you don't get why I would call it the Pooh, or just that, if you can't just smirk or giggle or laugh or just shrug your shoulders in a that's the way he is sort of way, then you're just kind of a jerk, man. I call it the Pooh because I think it's funny. And it is. And it doesn't matter if it was funny for a minute and 5 years from now it's not. It's still all right. It's just the name of something. It's like one thing I have trouble with, I can swear a lot sometimes. And I can't stand people, and there may be one close to me, but like you might not swear for the whole day, but you might have, like, with one story end up being like F-bomb. And I'm like 56 now, and I've been that way my whole life. To still derail something, do you have to swear so much? Grow the fuck up. I'm not like sitting there in my head planning I'm going to throw an F-bomb here. They come out. And to just derail and still bring that up is just aggravating, man. So, grow the fuck up on that shit. So, that's the main 2 things I had to get off my chest right away. So, as to the gig yesterday. So, it wasn't a gig. Like, they didn't search me out and can you come play? We're going to charge money. You'll see the video I put up on the venue yesterday. The sign out front says cold beer, open. One of those signs you wheel out on the trailer and put the words up. It wasn't the freaking Howley playing or something. And yeah, that was the other thing. I got 2 channels. I got the Pooh, and the other one's the freaking Howley. And the freaking Howley is going to be the one where I play songs. And that's where all the music will be. And this one's just the stuff I do. The shit I do. Regarding fixing shit on my RV and just everything I do. When I go to do something, looking for shark's teeth, all that stuff will be up here. Just all the minutia of life. The shit. Get it? So anyway, this is kind of my dream, and I want to do, and I've written a couple songs, but mostly I'm like a song finder, and nothing too deep, although I'm digging deep. But it's like some people, when you get into music, they never get out of what they liked in high school or whatever, and I still like a lot of that stuff, but I've never stopped finding new stuff, even if it's old stuff. If it's new to you, it's new. Because to think you live a life where you won't listen to Louis Armstrong because it's old you're a fucking idiot. Okay? I mean, that guy, he basically, I don't think, ever played a bum note. And he had to play it all live. Anything you hear from Louis Armstrong was played. They couldn't loop it or edit it or anything. It was all done live. I mean, and there's all those guys. Muddy Waters, all that stuff. If you're not incorporating that, you're a fool. But I understand. I got busy. That's not my whole life. I got it. I dig it. But that's what somebody like me, you can take the suggestions and I can maybe save you. There's a lot of Louis Armstrong music out there. I can maybe go, this is a good place to start, or this is the most interesting, or the most fun, It's like, the seminal Louis Armstrong stuff is the Hot Fives and Hot Sevens that he was doing in the late 20s and into the 30s. And then after that, he kind of just started doing more standards in the singing. And, it wasn't as pushing the envelope. Like most people, you get older and, kudos to the Stones. They don't do enough new music, but they're still trying to write songs. That's always Mick's thing. He wants to have a new album and shit. And they don't do it often, but they're still trying. Whereas the Who aren't really trying. They did put out a couple. But it's still, that can be some of the most enjoyable stuff where he just is laying down, singing Blueberry Hill and laying down a solo that's just sublime, Although in his last few years, I guess he couldn't even play trumpet because his lips and stuff were kind of blown. But it's not what we're here to talk about, is it? But it's all right, because that's all this is going to be. It's just talking about stuff, trying to recount what I'm doing, maybe sum up stuff. So anyway, so the gig. So that's been what I've been wanting to do. Make money and evangelize about the music I love and try and pass on cool songs, Like, you're going to play Beatles songs. I'm going to play, the continuing story of Bungalow Bill in, You Like Me Too Much, as opposed to I Never Would, but like Hey Jude or something, nobody needs to do another Hey Jude, in my opinion, That's what I get a kick out of. I remember when I was hanging out with these kids, I was in this band, and this kid was learning piano, and we were in a bar one night in Franklin, Massachusetts, and he'd learned like Imagine, or just like the beginning of it. And that, to me, you're not being purely honest there, because you're looking for the thing that everybody's like, oh, he's playing Imagine. Wow. It's all right to play it. Don't get me wrong, but you're looking for that as much as you're like, you love that song. And I'm not going there. I'd rather, like, oh, wow, that was a pretty cool song. Let me check that out. Or I haven't heard this in a while. Or, who did that one? Did you write that? No, it's the Stones did that, and they don't even know, like Child of the Moon or something like that, So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And it's pure. I play the big song. I love playing Angie and stuff, and but that just gets tiring. The same songs over and over, and there's just these other songs that exist that just need to be brought out there. And like throwaway songs, supposedly throwaway songs like Dear Doctor on Beggar's Banquet. That's just a great tune, man. And it's funny, Mick goes into the female voice, and Red, darling, I'm sorry to hurt you. That's when Mick's at his best, like Faraway Eyes, tongue in cheek, It's like after their little break in the mid-'80s, he came back and he just seemed to have lost that sense of humor and stuff. And it just, I don't know if you reach a point, you're a successful artist, and then you just start to worry about legacy. It's like, that's the nice thing about Dylan, is he still seems to have kept the sense of humor. Like on Love and Theft, I know he has that line in one of the songs, throw your panties out the window and stuff. And, like that big song he had a couple of years ago, Murder Most Foul, he's like, play Stan Getz, play Blue Sky, play Dickie Betts, throw lines like that. It's just funny. And George Harrison used to talk about that, how he was just so funny and people didn't get it. And it's like, that's how I I feel about Dylan. But the key is he doesn't go, I'm trying to be funny, folks. He doesn't say nothing. So you just don't know what to think a lot of times. And that's, I think, better, than trying to explain what you're thinking, I guess. I hope I'm not doing that too much. But so the gig, back to the gig. So that's been my dream to, and somehow make my, like, if I could make $100 5, 6, 7 nights a week, that'd be enough to live on. Right now I'm making zero. The only money I've ever made, my niece Phoebe gave me $1 to play a song with her or something. She'll always get that credit. So and that's still the only dollar I've made making money. So I've been driving by this bar and it just looked like my type of place, a small place. They had the little fenced in area outside and just that one room shack thing. Like you always hear the story, or you may not, but I have, about when Jerry Wexler, who's a famous producer for Atlanta Records, he did like the Ray Charles and stuff like that. And he was brought out to meet Fats Domino, and I think it's Jerry Wexler. I don't think it was Ahmet Ertegun, who was the owner of Atlanta Records. But they brought him out to the Dewdrop Inn, I believe it was called, which was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And he said as they were driving up, it's like the place was like bouncing. The music coming out of there was just, it's Fats Domino and his band with Dave Bartholomew and that I don't know, if Dave Bartholomew was actually with him. And Dave Bartholomew is the guy who wrote My Ding-a-Ling, which was, ironically, Chuck Berry's biggest selling single ever was My Ding-a-Ling. And even though he wrote Johnny Be Good and Sweet 16 and all those tunes, his biggest selling song was written by somebody else, which I find ironic because he wrote some of the most seminal, just perfect rock and roll songs, ever. But how he drove up to that place and it was just rocking. And that's how this place is like that. It's like the only thing, there's nothing around it. And it's like an intersection, and one of the roads is actually a dirt road, and there's farmland. There's a horse. You can go to the video I put out yesterday. It's like a minute and a half just showing the place. And I start with the horse's ass. And just great. That's just the ideal to me. And so anyway, finally I sold my house I finally left there on March 10th, I believe, a Friday. And so now it's just over 5 weeks, and I kind of just been, that's one of those things was going to gnaw at me if I had never done it. Finally, I just drove by there. I went in on Friday afternoon, and I'm like, hey, can I, do you have music here? Can I come and play music? And the bartender, Brittany, was like, yeah, grab your stuff. And I'm like, I don't have my stuff right now. I didn't think. And I actually did have an ukulele in the car, but I wasn't mentally ready. So I'm like, I'll be back tomorrow. And then I'm like, and she was like, cool, you can play right here. And, we high-fived. And so then I go home and, between moments of dread, like, what the fuck am I doing? And, like, I've got to do this. I did. I got up the next day and I couldn't sleep. I went to bed at like 2 or 3 in the morning, got up at 7. And I got up there around noontime. I went there, packed my car with guitars and amp and mic, and went up there. And she told the two girls working, Selena and Leah, that she'd tell them I was coming. And I went in there, and they're like, no, she didn't say a word. So she called Brittany, and then I got the okay, I guess. So they had an outdoor area. They have an indoor area, and it's very small. There's a pool table and like an L-shaped bar. And it's very small. And then outside's much bigger. And they had a pretty big stage up there with a roof over it. So I just set up in the corner where the plug was. And then started playing. This one guy came out. This guy, his name was, he was very encouraging. He was a great guy. Because he's like, sounds great, man. Nice and raw. Just getting up there, belting it out, Because I'm no practiced musician. And I'm not a great guitar player, but I can put a song across. I know how to sing the songs and the melodies and stuff, and some people can't do that. But that's irrelevant. I can, the voice may not be great, but my singing was better. Like he's like, you're hitting all the notes, and you know, so he was just the perfect guy to have there. And he had a buddy with him who was not as talkative, but he was cool, and he was just, this is cool. And there was so it was those two guys, and there was a few other people, and I got claps. I don't know if it was Tracy, and he's got his own YouTube channel, Tracy without an E, Stevens, which was appropriate. My first name's Steven, and he spells it Stephens. So subscribe to his channel too. He's a cool guy. He sings. And so after my set, he bought me a beer, and we just sat and shot the shit. And he's like, sounds good. And then he left. This is a biker bar. And not necessarily a Hell's Angels biker bar. There was some, there's some biker looking, mean looking dudes that, you can't judge a book by its cover. But people come there, have a beer or two, and then they're out to ride, and there's a kind of a circuit. There are bars like that's you go here, and out there the roads are just straight as an arrow and flat, and it's good riding stuff, but you got to put your sunscreen on, I bet. So he left, and there was a smattering of people, there was like a picnic table where they were smoking weed and shit, and no, they weren't. But yeah, it smelled good over there, and they sat there for a while, and they I don't know if they ever clapped, but they were like, sounds good, and commented on a couple songs I played, and there was a few other people. There wasn't a lot of people inside. There was at one point, maybe I'd say roughly about 20 people there, and at the most outside at any time was maybe 10. So I certainly wasn't drawing them outside, but I don't think I scared too many people away. So, and it's rough. And the thing is, I play every day, but for the past 5 weeks, I've been busy and my mind just hasn't been totally focused. And also, I just tend to want to do new songs, so these songs I've been doing for years, these Jack Straw and stuff, and just all these songs that I know, heard a million times, played 100 times, and I hadn't played them in a while. So I was kind of a little bummed out that I was screwing up lyrically, but not too bad. So I'm playing every day, but I'm learning new songs, like that Rugged Roses I put out last week from The Gorge, Jimmy Smith. So it's funny because I know a ton of songs, but there's always like a new old song I want to learn, So that's what you're doing. So then your other songs kind of suffer, like songs you knew and you had down, and then don't play them for a month or two, and boom. So I got to get back to you just got to run through them, nothing deep, just play them and sing them, at least once a week or something. And if you're playing gigs, hopefully like every other gig or something. So that was, and the other thing, it was windy, very windy. I put up a video of the first set on my other channel, The Freaking Howley, and you can see the wind. My shirt's blowing and my shorts, and there's a branch rubbing on the tin roof there, the metal roof. And I mean, it was significant. Like I had sheets of paper to read my lyrics, because people do that. I've accepted that's okay. You can't learn all, even the big people do it. And but like I'd open I have a clamshell thing there, like this thing right here, actually, to get like other songs and stuff. And the papers were, none of them went flying, but I had to like really battle to keep them under control. And it was a constant battle. So I got to be better prepared next time. Like I had like the first 4 songs planned out, which was, I opened up with Dire Wolf because Don't Murder Me seemed like an appropriate way to sing first. And not to mention, if you haven't heard, they've used the DNA to I believe, bring back the dire wolf, the actual dire wolf that was extinct. It's the first step, folks. It's not a good thing. Not a good thing. But, and then I did Time Passes Slowly by Dylan. And then went into Loving Cup by the Stones and into Bertha by the Dead. Those were the first. And then after that, I'd kind of dig into see what was up. And so I guess in the future, I should have like all of them lined up if I'm going to do that so I can go from one to the next a little better. But it went over well, and I think I haven't watched the video yet, but I was shooting the shit with that guy. That guy Tracy was interacting with me the whole time, and it was nice and relaxing. Like I could say stuff, and so it was just good. And it was good to have somebody like that there. So I thank you, Tracy, if you see this, and I think you should subscribe to his channel. I have, and just good to have people like that out there, and just he big guy, big muscle guy, long hair, biker, but he's I think he said he was a nurse, but like a X-ray nurse or something, when his kids are both like doctors or something, and just a good guy from Alabama. Now lives in Newport Richie, I think he said. Which is funny enough, I'm reading this book right now on the Carter family, who were the originator. They pretty much started country music. Them and Jimmy Rogers. There was other people, but the Carter family really, really popularized it. And the key is Maybelle Carter, who was A.P. Carter is the man, and his wife was Sarah Carter. And Maybelle married A.P.'s brother, Ezra, who they called Eck. So that's how but she was one of the first people to play guitar. See, right up into the 20s, the banjo was the main string instrument. And she was one of the ones who really popularized the guitar. And she was a great guitar player. And she would play like slide, like Hawaiian, because Hawaiian music was really big in the late 20s. And then it kind of died away and came back in the 60s. Never really totally went away, but. So she learned, she was a very well and played a big part in popularizing the guitar as kind of the main instrument that we all, that's the one you just get your kid a guitar and you can just put the guitar in the closet or sit it on on a stand and always have it there. It's just a very utile instrument, easy to transport, as well as the ukulele. And, but just that to me is fascinating and learning the ins and outs. I'd known about the Carter family a long time, and I actually at Record Store Day, the way they had it set up at Park Avenue CDs there in Orlando, they had sheets that they printed out and they handed them out. You could have printed them out beforehand if you had a printer to check off the ones you wanted. And you'd hand it to one of their employees and they'd go back in the back room and get all the albums. So I handed him my sheet, and I had like 20 albums on there, So then you go look around the store, and it was tight, but they have a used section that used to be, they bought the store used to be like a coffee shop next door, and they bought that, and they have all used CDs and records and some books. And there was this Carter family book, and it was the story of the Carter family. I should have it with me because I highly recommend it, because it's really kind of the history of America in the 19th century, as far as they did their first, they were in Appalachia, up in Nasus Springs near Hilton's in Virginia, near Bristol, in Kingsport, Tennessee. It's right near the border with Tennessee. Hilton's is kind of the town on the map, but they were in Nasus Springs off Route 58. And Ralph Peer, P-E-R, he was the guy who was doing recordings, and he had this guy named Stoneman had done some recordings, and he asked him to see if he could find some other people to record, and he'd go to Ralph Peer would come to Bristol with his recording equipment, and people would come there, and there'd be a line of people just waiting to record and hopefully get to make a record. And back then you didn't make albums. They'd put out 78s, which I believe were the size of 33 RPM LPs, but it was just one song on each side. So you'd record 8 songs, and that would be 4 78s, or something. And the Carter family went there, and recorded some songs, and they right away he knew he had something special. But it was like a year until he put out their first albums, and they just took off. They sold like 1 million or something on their first one, you know. And Jimmy Rogers though was a huge. He was a big. He was the singing break man, you know. Jerry Garcia fans and David Grisman, you know, the Blue Yodel #9 and those tunes were all the Jimmy Rogers, and he was huge. He sold like 250,000 at least on every song he put out. But he died young, at like 32 from tuberculosis. But he's also a drug addict, you know. And Maybelle Carter, later in her life, she's very discreet. She was like a great woman, I guess, you know, like just very non-judgmental, like. And but she revealed later in her life that she's like, you know, Jimmy Rogers took drugs in the arm, is that how she termed it, you know. So I don't know if it was heroin or what it was, just morphine or whatever. And he was a big drinker, and so he was a, you know, a raconteur guy, you know. But the Carter family, Chet Atkins got his start with them essentially. When he started playing with them, playing fiddle and guitar, that was the next step. The Carters got invited to the Opry, and they kept refusing because the Opry didn't want to take Chet Atkins as well, mainly because the the people in Nashville didn't want Chet Atkins coming in there because he was so good at guitar, really. And then the Carter family resisted, and this was when it was just Maybelle and her daughters with Chet Atkins. But they refused for like a year until they would take Chet Atkins as well. And Chet Atkins, of course, went on to ruin country music and Elvis's career. I say that in jest, but he was a big proponent of all the strings and the cheesy background singers. You know, he wanted to flatten it out for mass appeal, and it did kind of have somewhat of a negative effect. You know, and that's why you have that stark contrast somewhat with like the Bakersfield sound with Merle Haggard and Buck Owens, because they were just back to bands with guitars without all the cheesy shit, you know. And that's where that kind of. So Chet Atkins played a part in that. A killer musician, but kind of like a Mick Jagger attitude about it, you know, like I want to sell as much as I can. And that's always that big argument between integrity and greed. I don't know. That seems harsh to say he was greedy. Just trying to get it out there, but yeah, you know. But also Hank Williams, he was another guy who was when they got to the Opry, they befriended him, and I guess the Carter girls were all good looking, you know, June Carter and Anita Carter and Helen, and Anita was especially, she was the youngest of Maybelle's daughters, and she had like the sweetest voice and was very pretty, and Hank Williams had a thing for her, and she was about 17. Hank Williams was like 27 or so. So not crazy age difference, but he was just a bad drunk and just a pure hick, man. And so they had to keep their line. And I guess the thing was, Maybelle and Ezra's house in Nashville, like people would go there, and she was just such a solid human being that she would kind of put up with these guys and try and, you know, be stern with them, but never judgmental, you know. And but there's a story in the book about one time when Hank was his wife Audrey sounds like she was a total whore. She was always cheating on him, and it drove him nuts and drove him to drink, and created all those great songs like Cold Cold Heart and Lovesick Blues and all that shit. But one night he was really pissed at her, and June was a friend with Audrey, and Hank got shot at June, like shot and missed her, but was trying to kill. He was a crazy dude. But also, then Johnny Cash was the same thing. He once he came into the picture, they had a room for him at the Maybelle Carter's house for Johnny Cash that he could come in anytime. And there's like, I guess he used to come in. He was so pilled up and drinking it. This is early '60s, late '50s, early '60s. He'd like kick in the door, break windows to get in the house. And they'd just be like, oh, John, because he'd fix it, he'd pay for it. But, it's crazy how, like, back then, you did something like that now, it'd ruin your life forever, and these people were just understanding, and it was just like, you lose your shit sometimes. I do that a lot. I don't kick indoors and shit, but, where I swear too much or something, or just, I need to just fucking have a little rant. And I always look at, when I do a rant, it's the exhaust on a car, man. That's what that is. Like sometimes before I'm going to something, like maybe going to meet with a sibling or something for something, I'll kind of have an argument about something that I think might be an argument so that I don't have that argument. Like literally have it out and just so I get it out. It seems to kind of work somewhat. So back to the gig. So I mean, it was windy the whole time, and I have hydration issues. Like I had my colon removed when I was 32, and for whatever reason, it seems like that real. I've always been a very strong sweater. Thankfully, I don't smell too bad. I'm not saying I don't smell, but I don't have one of those like holy shit fucking rotten bologna smells. Thankfully, I don't think. But I sweat a lot, and not that I was sweating, but this wind. I mean, it was blowing steady, and I was out there from about noon till 7 o'clock, and I got so dehydrated by my last set. My hands were cramping up, my forearms, muscles along my rib cage, and I did 3 sets. I did 2 sets with my acoustic. Then I did a set with my ukulele. Then the last set I was using the Acoustasonic, which is electric, and you can switch it around and get an acoustic sound. But that one was only 40 minutes. But the last 2 sets, the set with the ukulele, and there was nobody out there. It was just like I was practicing, which I was. So, but it was good to do it someplace different with the standing up and with the microphone, and so I was all for it. I didn't care. So the set I put up on the freaking Halley is the one where probably there was the most people there, and it couldn't have been more than 10, but that was a good half of the people who may have been at the bar. So it was just a slow day. So now I feel the key is I'm gonna go up there this week and thank them for letting me play, and be like, I'm gonna come if I can come again Saturday, I will. And you got to be a little pushy, I think, and you also can't let it die. And I also need to go to other places. And I'll tell you, once I started singing, I was just letting it go, man. I was singing full voice, and I felt all right about it. I felt like I was doing as well as I could by myself. I could have known my songs better. And I got to play my original song, Left Behind. I didn't do number 46. And if you watch, I'm going to put the set 2 up. I'll probably put them all up. And a lot of it's not pretty. Don't get me wrong. The ukulele set's interesting because the first, like, 5 songs were a fucking train wreck. But nobody was there, so I was like, I got to work this out. And then I think I kind of caught my groove a little bit, and it was passable, And like the second half of that was enjoyable and solid, I think. And then with the Acoustasonic, the B string, which is the B string on your guitar, which is the second from the bottom, the thin ones, the treble strings. That's even in the best of conditions. Like if you ever seen Vince Gill's channel, he's like, and like at the last thing he says, kind of as an out, he's like, and tune your B string, because that's like the string that I guess is like kind of just has the most trouble. And but mine was going out of tune like immediately. So I'm playing. The first 2 tunes I did was the Jack Straw, Sugaree, like any good Dead show. Sugaree's always been song number 2, almost from the beginning. It seems it's just like the perfect second song. And but yeah, you can hear the B string out of tune. But I was aware. I'm like, what am I gonna do? So, I mean, I tuned it after, but between each song, but it was going out of tune quick, and it was aggravating me because I don't recall it being like that. I don't know if it was being outside or the wind. So we'll see what happens there because that sucked. But so all in all, it was just good to do that. Good to hopefully get that ball rolling, and just I just felt all right standing up there and looking off into the I don't even know what I was looking at. You know, when you kind of start singing, you don't really see anything. It's kind of weird. You know, I wasn't really looking at people while I was singing, but I also wasn't consciously not looking at them. You know, and I was reading the lyrics a lot too, but I just felt all right. My singing was better than I thought I sang, to be honest with you. Like I felt when I was singing the shit, you know, like it was better than I thought I was. You know, like hitting the big notes, like, you know, just whatever I was singing, you know. I don't know, check it out for yourself on the freaking Howley. So that was it. But by the end, and so I played. They were all about an hour. And the second set, you know, and I had this other guy, you know, like I'm walking by. He's like, "You got a card?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Dude, I want you to come and jam. I'll fucking take care of you." You know, I just moved to Wauchula, and I'm like, so I directed him to the freaking Howley YouTube channel, and so hopefully I may hear back from that guy or something. But that was just generally positive. So my second set, I opened up with Love Potion #9, and I can't remember what I did second, but I hadn't started filming, so then I went over and started. So that second set I'll put up was missing the first two tunes, and I see like the Love Potion #9 I had down, very simple song, but I screwed it up a little, and again, to a point where maybe a casual music fan might not notice, but I would notice. Like I laughed. The last song I did in the first set was "Lover Madly" by The Doors, which I've just kind of started playing. And I don't do any part of the solo, you know, like the dun 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 dun, yeah, don't, and then he comes back in. So I kind of just cut out that solo, and I gotta maybe get to a point where I can do something on the guitar to imitate that, you know, to put solos in there, you know, and to hopefully just fill those out. But I kind of laughed to myself because I don't know, you know, there was little mistakes that I caught. But the guy with Tracy who was like, you know, I saw you smiling up there when you were hitting those notes, like he was complimenting me, but I was smiling because I messed up, but I didn't correct him on that. I'm like, same difference. And then you'll see in the second set, there's a point in that second set where I played the song before Desolation Row, and then I played Desolation Row. But when I started Desolation Row, there was nobody outside anymore. From that point on, there was nobody out there for the rest of the day. And there was hardly anybody in the bar either. There was like two guys in there smoking cigarettes. And but I'm like, yep, everybody left, so I'm doing Desolation Row, which was fun to do. And I screwed that up a little bit. Because it's funny, because I know that one pretty good, but I hadn't played it in a month or two. So I had the lyrics there, but a big gust of wind came and the sheets of paper got like bunched up. So I couldn't really read. so I mumbled a couple. There was like two or three lines that I kind of had to mumble through. But I got that down, and I love singing that one and playing it. I just love it. And I closed that set with Just Like Tom Thumb's Blues, you know, which was appropriate. I wish people had been there because the opening line, of course, being "When you're lost in the rain and it's Easter time too," very appropriate. But I got that one down. I didn't need the lyrics on that, and I got all 6 verses of that down. And I was struggling with one. The second verse, I was always having trouble with that second verse with "If You See St. Annie." I just couldn't remember that verse. Once I started, I could do it. And then the fifth verse, which is "All the authorities, they just stand around." That one I had trouble remembering. I'm always like, what the? And even the last one a little bit. You know, I started out on Burgundy. Of course, I started out on Heineken, which Phil, that was Phil Lesh sang that with the Dead. And that's what he did on the famous Hershey Park, June 28th, 1985, a famous tape from back in the day. Hopefully they release that someday. Because that is a great show. The Morning Dew. But he sang that on that. And so that's just a great tune. Just like Tom Thumb. That whole Highway 61 revisited, folks. You got to listen to that. It's like a greatest hits album. Same with Blonde on Blonde and Bringing It All Back Home. There's so many songs I didn't play that I wish I had. Just even when it was just myself, you know. She Belongs to Me. Everybody knows This Is Nowhere. I only played one Neil Young song. I played Pocahontas. Neil is just one of those dudes, man. I respect that he's out there speaking his mind. But everything he's speaking, I don't agree with. And here's the deal, folks. He's out there and he's doing it, but he's lived in a bubble of privilege, which he's been able to maintain because of what he does and how he does it, which is well, writing songs and playing them. But since the days of Buffalo Springfield, he's lived in a world of security and backstages, and I just don't think it's totally fair to be saying things should go on. Like, if you go on his website, he's got a newspaper that he does, the Times Contrarian. And again, kudos for expressing your opinions. There's a lot of people like a Mick Jagger who just try and not be controversial at all, you know, and or express themselves, which may turn out to be controversial. And it's off-putting, you know. You're 80 years old and you basically stand for nothing. Mick. You know? I don't care. You're fabulously rich. You've written some of my favorite songs. You know, and but you've sacrificed your integrity, I believe. So that's my thing with Neil Young, though, is a lot of the things he's promoting, he does, like with Pelosi and all, like most of those senators, they're not dealing with the repercussions of what they're okay with. You know, we all want to be good people. You know, none of us are against the mother with 2 kids coming across the border to work. But there's very few, that's a small percentage, folks. And it's still just wise to know who these people are, man. That's all. That's all we're asking for. Common sense, ordered immigration, legal immigration, you know? So to be against that is just, and people who live in with security, and taxpayer security is even worse. That's why the politicians are totally despicable. But you can't. But Neil Young has a thing on there too about Ukraine and Europe. You know how this trade war and the tariffs and stuff, and Europe's not our enemy, and they're trying to have equal trade with them is the wrong bullshit, dude. Europe is not our fucking ally. France, Germany, England, they don't fucking respect us on any level anymore. And they think they're better and smarter about all these issues. They're not our enemy, dude. They are our enemy. I consider them our enemy. The governments of those nations, France, Germany, England, they are our enemy, and that's how I see it. And until you prove otherwise, that's how I'm going to see it. You're not our ally. And all the people in those countries who support your governments, you're my enemy. And that is how it's going to remain until proven otherwise. And that's a hard fact, man. And that's how it's seen from somebody who has nothing and powerless. That's how I feel. That's how I see it. And I'm more informed than most. Not saying I have all the facts and all the, you know, but I get multiple different sources, and I'm also just able to, I'm not really in on with anybody on anything, you know? I'm not a joiner. So I don't just blindly follow people or anything. So it's like there's a big thing right now going on with that. I don't know if you've seen the Joe Rogan and Dave Smith debate, or Douglas Murray and Dave Smith debate on Joe Rogan from a couple weeks ago about Palestine and Gaza. And Douglas Murray, who's somebody I liked, he's kind of a pompous English guy. But he's a reporter, worked for a credentialed reporter, and he's challenging Dave Smith because Dave Smith is a comedian by trade, but he's also had his podcast for years and is very well informed on many of the things our government's doing in foreign policy. And there's a famous moment in the debate where Douglas Murray's like, "Have you ever been to the checkpoints in Gaza?" And Dave Smith's like, "No. Does that mean I can't talk about any of this stuff?" And he's like, Douglas Murray says, "You've never been." And now that's like a big, you'll see that in all the comments a lot, like, and they're spelling it Bean because that's how he said it. He's like, "Bean?" Like Douglas Murray is a pompous ass. And once you've kind of turned and been like, "All right, dude," because he's like, his basic premise of the debate, it was supposed to be about Gaza for the most point and the Palestinian issue. He turned it into defending the experts. And if you're not an expert, you shouldn't be talking about stuff. Sorry, I'm not an expert on anything, and I'm going to talk about whatever the fuck I want anytime I want to talk about it. And if you're dumb enough to just accept anything I say or to think I'm even suggesting you should, that's on you, man. That ain't on me. But I'm more informed than most, I'll say that. And Dave Smith's more informed than me. And Douglas Murray talks about many things like, and he's like, if you haven't been there, you shouldn't talk about it. There's places he talks about he's never been. So just the hypocrisy and the condescension. Douglas Murray's getting skewered. And then Douglas Murray put out an op-ed in the New York Post defending his take and what he was trying to get across in the debate. How many of us have an option to put out an op-ed in the New York Post? Right there is part of the issue. These assholes get these fucking, the chance to do that. It's like, and this is, I'm going to jump way over here now, but it's like Chelsea Clinton was put in charge of $1 billion fucking scam charity by her parents. She never earned a fucking thing in her or has lived in the real world in her life. She gets like a $16 million salary. Do you know that most of those nonprofits, they pay themselves? And very little of the money goes to anything they're driving for. And we're talking even the ones, the Catholic ones and all the BS ones. They're all BS. All these people in Virginia, the richest counties in America, where everybody's driving around in a Range Rover and walking around in their Lululemon, sipping tea at Starbucks. None of those fuckers do anything on the level, and nothing about them is honest or fucking real. And that's a fact. That's why they're freaking out about that USAID shit. Because that's where they're friends in Congress. A lot of times their husband or wife, and they run the other spouse runs a nonprofit, and they make sure that millions of dollars get there. And you know where that all goes? In their fucking pockets. And you know what they can say, and you know what they do, and you know what it is. It's like, well, our nonprofit, we're bringing attention to the issue. That's how they get away with it. That's how they've said, they make the rules. So if you're doing that, everything, we have the literature and we're bringing attention to that issue, but all the millions of dollars we take in goes to us. That's the scam there, dude. That's what's going on. So, and there seems to be, where we're getting to right now in society is the expert class against regular people who do their own research and try and be informed and get and look, it does take a lot of time. I've said it before, you people with kids, I don't know how you do it. Even just taking care of the kids and yourself, never mind searching out music or informing yourself on issues, So that's the problem. But this bullshit that because you have a master's degree from some college, especially if it's in like a social science, it means nothing. It just means that you get to, the rules that have been made, that you get to practice that. You have the credentials for that. These teachers teaching this shit, it's not all completely 100% bullshit, but a lot of it's bullshit. And it means nothing. Like Dr. Jill Biden, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, that's a disgrace. And that's all they want. They want to be called the doctor. I remember, like, kind of the last girl I dated, and I was just head over her heels on her. She was an immigrant from Bulgaria, and she still had the accent, but she wanted, and I that was one of the attractive things. But she wanted so hard to get rid of that accent. And the last time I talked to her, she had, and it was just so. But she used to talk about, no, I want to go. She had like this sponsor or something. It was like a Jewish lady, and she lived in Newton, Mass, which is, one of those places that should be nuked. And I'm not kidding. But she's like, I'm hoping to get to Babson College to get my because they just want to have like doctor, because it automatically, if you don't have that, you can't even debate with them, and it's just such fucking bullshit. I'll take real world experience over any of that shit. These assholes who've grown up in upper class families, went to upper class universities, and then into upper class positions at companies, and have never lived a real day in their life worrying about where the money's going to come from and fucking how they're going to fucking live. So, sorry. And that's what's going on. And there's a lot more of me than there are them. But they own the TV stations and everything else, and the colleges and all this other BS. And that's what we're going through right now. The expert class is fighting back, like that grifting piece of shit Obama just came out defending Harvard because Trump wants to stop the funding for them because they're fucking, basically they hate America, and they do. And they want to have men dressing with women, and the women get no say in the locker rooms and competing in the sports with them. That is just absurd. If you're for that, you're a fucking piece of shit, man. It's not a debate. It's not even that's your opinion. You're a piece of shit. You think some girl, an 18, 19, 20-year-old girl, is in her locker room and some guy says, I'm a girl now, and gets to go in there and still has his dick and is just able to stand right next to her at a locker and change into his bathing suit, and that's okay, and that girl should just take that? You're a fucking deviant piece of shit. There's no debate on that. That's 100% I'm right. And if you think that's okay, you're a deviant piece of shit who should be beat up. You should be bloodied, hung by your underwear from a fucking door, and have people throw darts at you. That's these fucking, and it's all these richer people, overeducated and not smart, overeducated, self-satisfied pieces of shit, man. It's just so aggravating. But that being said, so I gotta keep my foot on the pedal on doing this gig shit. And look, man, I'm a fucking person. I'm gonna speak my mind. I'm a real person, and I stand by that. I like to know that people do know where I stand on shit. I'm not somebody who's telling you something and then behind their back being like, well, fuck that guy, or that guy's whatever. You're gonna know what I think about you. And but I just want to say there's two people I follow that I like watching their videos. Wonder Hussy, and a guy who I got turned on to through her, this Mike Z. Is Mike Zikopoulos or something. I don't know if his channel is that. But he's got Astrovan Tribe. He's got an Astrovan, that's all. He works on it all the time. Just a really, he does a Sunday night chat, which this is kind of what that is, and hopefully I can do it regularly. But he tells some great stories and explains shit really well, and he goes off and comes back in, and he usually lands pretty well, and he's just a really interesting dude. And the thing I like about both of them is a lot of their references and things they'll bring up are like things I'm thinking just to myself. Like Mike Z talks about, people will send him stuff. He's got like 10,000 followers or something, and I've got like 33. But he'll be like, when he lives by himself, he's single and shit, and he's just like, sometimes you just buy stuff and you like getting stuff in the mail just because you're lonely, and it brings you, and it's not a sad lonely, you're just literally just kind of lonely, and you hang out with people and you're like, boy, I like being alone. But but that's what I was like thinking, that very thought. Like how, I buy a lot of CDs and t-shirts still, and I try and keep them around the $10 to $20 area, but I like getting shit in the mail, you know, or having just waiting for stuff, it's just fun. And but he brought that up, and there's been several things that have been kind of just those weird things you think to yourself, like, why do I keep doing this? And he like hit right on it. I'm like, what's up with that? Like, it's very weird. Like, that's just kind of a thought you're having to yourself in your head, and somebody brings it up, and it's just like, it's satisfying, it's interesting, it's just so, it's weird, and Wonder Hussy too. Her reference points and some of the stuff she'll say is just so, it's just right on my level, So I just kind of am able to get right in there, and when she's talking, and she's just, sometimes she makes up these silly stories sometimes when she goes to like abandoned, she does a lot of abandoned houses and stuff out in Death Valley area, and a lot of people really like that, and I don't mind it, but some of it gets a little silly when she keeps going, like making up a whole story about who may have lived there and how they lived. Sometimes it's good because it relates to what she's finding, and other times it goes off the rail, and I just don't find it as interesting. But she's making it up, and that's just how that's going to be, a little hit or miss somewhat there. So, like I said with the Neil Young, I don't like what he's saying, but the fact that he's willing to say it, that's a lot of points, And that is one of the biggest things for me right now, How a lot of my heroes that are still alive have they're all on that other side. And I'm a thinking person, and I just can't agree with them. Nothing they've said, and they don't really present anything, They do think they're special, a lot of them. So that's kind of the big internal thing trying to work out, And that's it's just so interesting that for years and years it was never an issue. And then since Trump and COVID, it's all become a thing. And God bless Bob Dylan, because for the most part, he just keeps his mouth shut on everything. What his songs are about, what he thinks about anything. So that's the other side of the Neil Young coin, And the reason I'm more cool with, but then you have, and kind of Bob Weir kind of falls in the middle, because he does say things, not a lot of things like Neil Young, but he doesn't keep his mouth completely shut like Bob Dylan on issues. So he's kind of in the middle there. And like a guy like Mickey Hart, I just have no respect for anymore. He's I don't think we'd like each other, Bob Weir may laugh at me and we could still at least enjoy a beer or something maybe, but I don't know, So that's it. So I went all over the place. So the gig was all in all pretty positive, and I felt all right. I got up there in front of people who don't know me and I don't know it all, and gave it my all. And I hope to continue doing that and actually have it where they're like, "Hey, will you come here and play? We like the songs you're playing. People like it. They like the general, and it's a general feeling you're trying to create. Like I'm all about just rawness and putting my all into it, and hopefully people see that, and they're like, "Hey, man, he's giving it everything." It ain't often pretty, but that's what I'm trying to do. So I hope I can do more of these, and they'll be what they'll be. Not going to make notes. Maybe sometimes you might try and write down just some topics so you don't forget about them or get lost in the weeds. But just want to speak my mind, because I guess I am alone, and you don't really get to, but it's not a sad alone. All right, over and out.